Hello, my fellow Americans. I'm Bill Lipinski, and this is Two Guys on Politics. And next up is our cleanup hitter, Ray Hanania. Hello, Ray.
Hey, Bill, and of course, I am Ray Hanania, and this is August 30th, 2024, Season 3, Episode 26. We're looking at the presidential election. A lot of stuff has been happening, Bill, including, let's start out with one of our favorite topics, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Now, he ran as a third-party candidate. He took a beating from his family, but he did have some members, I think like his sister, who stood up and defended him and his right to run as a third-party candidate. But there were so many concerns that he'd impact the election. And at some point, I guess he decided that he wasn't getting enough votes. He certainly, he did at some point look like he had like 20% of the vote, or polling anyway. I don't know about the vote, but that kind of dropped over the past month, 6 weeks, and he decided to endorse Donald F. Trump. Was that a surprise to you, do you think?
Well, when he was getting 20% of the vote in polls, I was very much impressed by his position. And I thought that if he stayed in, he could possibly throw this election into the House of Representatives. I think that he could have possibly won a couple of states, depriving either Trump or Biden of the electoral votes necessary, or Kamala for that matter. But the news media decided that he was getting too strong, he was getting too popular, I think, it's my opinion. They stopped really covering him, other than for the negative thing that he might say or do. That's the only time that they put him in the newspapers. You didn't see him being interviewed on TV. You didn't see any kind of interviews with him in any of the leading liberal publications in this country. I mean, there was almost a total blackout on the man. The only way he was going to get any kind of recognition was by campaigning himself in states, because he really had no infrastructure in these states. There was no real groundswell for his candidacy. There weren't that many people rushing to support him. So I'm not surprised that his popularity went down to 5% only. I am somewhat surprised that Trump accepted his endorsement, because I really don't know how much that endorsement is going to bring to Trump. And I am sure that Kennedy wants something out of this. I'm sure he wants to get some kind of position in the government. Now you can disagree with me on what it brings to Trump, and you could be right, but I still don't believe it's going to help Trump out very much.
Yeah, now I always viewed Kennedy as a conservative leaning toward the Republican Party, even though he comes historically from one of the strongest Democratic, families we've had. John F. Kennedy, the president in the 60s, Robert F. Kennedy, the candidate, Ted Kennedy, who I think you served with at one point. I mean, these were liberal Democrats, not the I don't know, maybe John F. Kennedy may have been a little more conservative than Ted Kennedy in later years, had he lived. But I do think that, when Kennedy had 20% of the vote, and again, we're talking that changed, that those were mainly Republican votes. I think most of those votes shifted to Trump away from Kennedy. And even if he only gives them his 5%, that's a significant number of votes, considering that the two candidates, Kamala Harris, who's really at the short end of the stick, because she only has like 10 weeks to run for president. Trump has been running for 8 years, served as president, running for the last 3.5 years. Kamala Harris has always been behind the curtain during the Biden administration. You didn't see her until, I'd say, talk started that he might have to drop out. Suddenly we started learning everything about Kamala Harris, good, bad, ugly, and strong. So I think that his endorsement is going to have a strong impact to help Trump.
Yeah, I disagree with you on that, but we'll see what happens. I think that she's fortunate that she only has 10 weeks to campaign, because the news media will do a superb job in helping her campaign by praising everything that she does do. She will not be open to that much criticism by the news media, if any criticism by the news media. And she will see the news media continue to pound upon Trump. Now,
Right.
once again, I got to put the disclaimer out there. I'm not a Trumper at all.
I understand. Right.
Never voted for him. I never will vote for him. But there is no question that the news media is for her, against him, and they slant everything. And I'd like to talk about that big interview that she had last night.
And just to set the stage, the role of the news media has been tremendously disappointing, that they're not acting like journalists. They're acting like cheerleaders for their favorite candidate. They shore up, they pump up the candidate they like, they attack the candidate they don't like. Mainly on the national screen. I watched Meet the Press last week, the interview with the host, the woman who's the host, and JD Vance, and I'm thinking that was very confrontational. In not just confrontational, but excessively confrontational, where after she was done with the interview, she still went on to say that he was completely wrong and of what he said, and he didn't know what he was talking about. I'm going, oh my God, when did the news media become so partisan and so politically involved? And I think they're part of the problem that we see today, this gap that exists between the Republicans and the Democrats. They're so far apart. There's no middle ground anymore. There's no someone who moderates this. But go ahead. You were gonna this was there was an interview that took place last night. I refused to watch it because no question in my mind, it was intended to pump Kamala Harris up. It was with a friendly reporter. The whole week they were talking about Kamala Harris and her campaign were trying to figure out who would be the best journalist for her to speak, to get her views across. Like the journalist was being used. Tell us about that interview. Who was the journalist, and what happened during that interview?
First of all, it was advertised as being this hard-hitting interview. That's number one. Number two,
I'm sure
that it was going to be an hour long, that she was going to be asked these questions. Well, first of all, it actually was only about 40 minutes long because of commercials, because of other breaks. It was only 40 minutes. She also had her vice president there, and they asked him 2 or 3 questions, which chewed up another 6 or 7 minutes. But the most glaring error was, now she did a superb job on this. There is no question about it. But there was not a question asked to her that I have not heard her answer going back a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. There was nothing new that came out of this whatsoever. And she didn't have to know the questions beforehand, like some people said they would give her, because she's answered these questions.
Right.
There was not one single new position of hers that came out of this interview. Now, prior to the program, there were 6 people. 5 out of the 6 were no question they were Democrats, leaned towards the Democratic Party. There was 1 poor Republican on there. So the things that they discussed beforehand, okay, there were 5 one direction and 1 in the other. Now we have this scintillating interview, hard hitting, and after it's over, we have a few different people, but it's still 5-1, Democrat to Republican. And she did a magnificent job.
According to them.
She stood up underneath this interview. Okay. Yes, according to them. I mean, it is disgusting in my mind what the press has come to. Now, the right wing is the same way. I mean, you watch Fox.
No, I understand. We're talking about the media across the board. We're not just targeting the left or and not the right. We're talking about the entire media on the national level has lost their mandate and their mission, their industry is totally collapsed. And I like to distinguish to listeners that it's different from the local media. The local media still does the job it's supposed to do,
Hard to
or at
believe
least
that.
tries to. But on the national level, it's just unbelievable. They're cheerleaders. Who was the main? How many panelists were questioning her? Was it one or all of those six?
Just one.
Who was it? Do you
It was a woman. I forget the woman's name. I don't watch CNN.
Yeah, so they picked somebody who was going to be one sympathetic with her on a lot of the issues. I bet. Were there any hard hitting issues that would embarrassing to Kamala? Was there anything that embarrassed her?
Oh, absolutely not. No.
Yeah, I mean that's why I just didn't want to watch it.
There are questions that she's answered before. There was not a new question asked of her. Now, here, let me tell you, the most objective panelist on before or after this interview was David Axelrod.
Yeah, David, we both know, was a great guy, smart.
Very smart guy, very nice guy. But Harris, he's a very strong partisan Democrat.
Yeah, I mean, he is, but at least in his case, when I hear him talk and ask questions, I get a sense that he is saying what he believes rather than saying what he thinks is going to help a candidate who he may favor. He was somewhat critical of Biden, when there was all that talk of should Biden stay in or drop out. And I was not surprised that he was just pretty fair about it. So, so David probably be the one, but he didn't get to ask the tough questions of Kamala Harris, right? And she hasn't done any interviews. She hasn't done any press conferences. She hasn't done any interviews. They criticized Trump when he was running. They said he didn't do any interviews. He didn't do any press conferences. And then when he started doing them, they ripped them apart. And I assume that if Kamala Harris were to do some press conferences, naturally there'd be some questions that would rip her apart. But they're not going to let that happen, are they?
Absolutely not. She did this very important interview. And the next time you see her probably will be in the debate with Trump. Now, let me tell you, as far as this interview, she has a fantastic smile. There is no question about that. She beats Oprah in her ability to smile. And you think about any woman that was a celebrity, that was in politics, that was in movies.
Yeah.
Nobody matches Kamala's smile. And I think that's going to help her appreciably. On top of that,
without anybody criticizing or questioning her, of course. Yeah, your looks, it comes down to your looks in terms of what people are going to vote on, because they can't vote on the issues because the issues aren't being discussed. Nobody's talking about the issues.
Well, she's true to her core values.
Yeah.
Just because she's changed her position on 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 issues, she's still true to her core values. That's what I heard last.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, I enjoyed the Oprah Winfrey show. I meant the Democratic Convention. I thought that was a great entertaining program for 4 days. I didn't see it as, it was probably one of the least political conventions I've ever seen. It was like a celebrity gathering, of friends and people that were just so happy. I didn't see anything discussed about the challenges facing Americans, the issues that we face, how they're going to deal with the economy. They're talking about, they know that Americans are upset about groceries. The cost of groceries have tripled in many cases. So Kamala Harris has said something about she's going to try to impose some controls to prevent these increases in the grocery store. But just because the media has been focusing on the grocery store, that's not the only economic problem out there. But it's the one that they talk about the most. So naturally, she's addressing the grocery store. She's not talking about gasoline. She's not talking about taxes. She's not talking about our Social Security and money. And, Trump is talking about Social Security. He said he's going to take and stop the tax on the Social Security portion, from your check as a worker, the tax they take and they put into the Social Security Trust Fund. But I've always thought, that they only tax the first $168,000. Anything after that, they don't tax for Social Security. They should raise that to $500,000 or even $1 million, and every dollar from $1 million down should be contributing to the Social Security tax
I
trust
agree.
fund. Yeah, it's like it makes sense, right?
If we implement, and this is still 10 weeks before the election, if we implement the programs that both Trump and Kamala have that are free to the American people, which means the taxpayers pay.
Right. Yeah.
We are going to have to increase taxes significantly. That's as of today. So you can imagine what it's going to be by the time we get to the election. I frankly don't think that either one of them will implement many of these things whatsoever when they get into office. But they sound good to people who don't realize,
right,
you don't get anything for free. It costs you money. It costs you tax money. I just want to go back to that. You were talking about Oprah and the convention.
Yes, right.
Again, say, and I'm so proud of myself that I said to myself that this convention could have been a convention of Ronald Wilson Reagan, chanting USA, USA.
Yes.
Waving the
patriotism, the flags.
Patriotism, God, country, be strong.
Minus the Reagan issues that he addressed, which were pretty strong at the time. They don't come close to any of those.
No, but as far as the pageantry, it could have been
pageantry, the fluff.
And there were two of the left-wing commentators that I heard during the convention said, I really thought Ronald Reagan had come back and as a Democrat.
Yes. Oh,
that's
believe me.
The convention went.
I'm going to tell you, the media said that, and the commentators said that on purpose, because that was a signal to Reagan Democrats who might be voting in the Republican side to come back. Hey, we recreated Ronald Reagan. She is so far from Ronald Reagan. The convention may have looked like a Ronald Reagan arena, but the issues are completely gone. And that's really disappointing.
She's from California, like Ron was.
Yes, yeah, that's enough to make that for the media to make the comparison.
That's about all they have in common. But
yeah, they do. It's sad though that the media they don't do it. And I'll give you another example. The media has given Biden a pass when he said he cut the cost of prescription drugs. Now, when you really look at that, what he did, and I looked at it really carefully, he put a cap on insulin, the cost of insulin, at $35 from Medicare. And he didn't do anything with prescriptions. He did one prescription for insulin. And then a couple weeks ago, he said he was going to talk to the big pharma about reducing or capping some of the other prescriptions, about 5 or 6 of the prescriptions. And I thought, okay, that in itself is a media lie where they dropped the ball. If someone else had said, I made a change on prescriptions, they would have raked them across the coals. But the other part of it, as I did the research, Donald Trump introduced the cap on insulin, $35 in 2019. He did that before Biden. And when Biden came into office, he suspended it and then rewrote it and then reintroduced it under his own name. It really bothered me that the media is not educating the public about what I think are significant issues like that. They're not talking about the substance of issues. There's no critical analysis of issues. It's all about, oh yeah, he's going to cap prescriptions. You seniors should shut up and just accept it. Quit bitching about the Social Security. Now Trump has proposed, eliminating that tax. And to me, that's a big deal. Obviously, I'm a senior. Social Security means a lot to me at this point, and I think a lot of seniors. I think that issue, if the media were to draw on it, he would do really well. And if he would focus on it and just shut up sometime, quit calling people names, quit attacking people personally, talk about the issues. That's his biggest problem, I think.
Now he is, he just continues to do, say some of the dumbest, stupidest things I've ever heard in my life. And he's got his vice president now doing the same thing. Here is a man running for the vice presidency of the United States of America. And what does he say? He says some people can go to hell. Now,
Right.
what kind of image does that create for this country with the rest of the world and with the citizens of this country? How do you feel? And I happen to like Vance very much because he is trying to spread Catholic social teaching into the Republican Party. But he's going to get no place with that by making
I agree. I agree because
this the ladies with their kittens, you don't get any place in this world, I don't believe, by continually insulting people.
Well, and that reminds me of why Hillary Clinton lost in 2016, calling half of the Americans deplorable, saying that we're the lowest type of people, almost like we're meaningless. That was her biggest mistake when she said only the deplorables support this guy. And I'm looking at her going, you just called half of America stupid. So you're right. When you attack the American public, there's a group of them that take it very personal, and it comes back in the election. And that could hurt Vance and Trump if he keeps it up. Now, they didn't pick up on it as much, although the media did make they ignored everything he said, and they did focus on what Vance said. So I don't know. It's kind of up in the air. We're only like about 6.5 weeks or so away from the election. I don't know. You never know. Something major could happen, and it could change things. And I think we've kind of exhausted this, but we'll come back next week.
I believe
what
that
do
if
you think?
it was held today, the Democrats would win. I don't know what's going to happen though in November, because as you said, you never know what's going to happen in these races. And well,
she's coming. Kamala Harris comes out of a positive bump from the Democratic convention, where all we saw was positive stuff for 4 days, prime time, every station. I don't recall it being like that when the Republicans had their convention. It was completely different, combative, coverage. So she's going to get a positive bump. And I think the polls reflect that she's done very, very well in the polls. But when you see these things like this interview and all the things that have subsequently and that are going to happen, she's not going to answer any of the major questions. The American people are not stupid. You could try to pull the wool over their eyes, but they see through it, and they're going to see through the media. The media is not doing Harris any favors. She needs to step up to the plate and answer tough questions. And I just don't see her doing it.
I don't either, but I disagree with you. I think the media is doing her great favors. Every time she does something, they say it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. Other than Fox News and maybe one other sort of independent network, every network is with her, and they just keep praising her.
Well, this is what I mean by not doing her favors. When they keep saying the economy is good, think under Biden, jobs, blah, blah, blah. It's all relative. We lost 1 million jobs, but in the last week, it went up 20,000. Biggest surge we've seen. Wow. That doesn't come close to replacing the millions of jobs we lost. I think that the American people see through that, and they see that she is getting the favor, bread and butter, from the media, but not talking about substance. Anyway, we can rejoin again. I'm Ray Hanania.
I'm Bill Lipinski.
And we will talk to you again next week for another episode of Two Guys on Politics. Have a great week, everybody. Memorial Day weekend. We'll talk to you next Thursday. Bye-bye, everybody.
It's Labor Day weekend.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Labor Day. See, I had a little touch of Bidenitis there.
I can understand that.
All right. Goodbye, everybody.